right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're calling it the 2024 outlook on what is your greatest concern and what do you suggest as a solution going forward. Keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. I'll read them in just a bit. Now, you wanted to say something before I bring in Arnold, yes?
He was writing down so he can respond, and I wanted him to add just this one thing.
Yeah.
Yesterday, the cost of electricity tokens went up by about 16.5%. Currently, we know that our dams are full and overflowing. We know that global oil prices have been declining over time. Now, when prices increase, we wonder what kind of logic our government is using. Energy drives the economy. So if we are to be hopeful, at least we would see that the government is making efforts in that regard. So Arnold, start there.
So Arnold, you talk about people being hopeful. So what gives you hope? They are talking about the things that are bothering them. What gives you hope? Enumerate them one at a time and say, this is why I'm hopeful, this is why I'm happy.
I will actually, I already spoke about where we've been, and I'm talking about things that are anchored, number one, in history, number two, in evidence. You can always refer to something else. That's why we always cite. And I actually spoke. No one is actually glamorizing the situation. No one, including the president himself. He's not glamorized it, but he's told us that we have to brace ourselves. Be that as it may, even as I respond to this, let me start with this. You know, having an opportunity to have a national platform like this, when you come to a national show like this, regime bashing cannot be actually be considered to be an objective analysis or commentary. So when we come here, over and above, of course, pointing out what is wrong, which is actually fair, completely legal, constitutional, and everything else, it also is expected of us to go out of our way and also probably speak to other people, because this is morning. And when we are here in this morning, it's in the AM, you probably have to speak some things that will help people out there. So it's okay. So I'll start responding one by one and then come to you as I'll enumerate. He gave us scathing scorecard on education. And number one, when you come to a national platform and then you use social media gossip and rants and everything else as the standard for which you actually are giving national commentary, then you do a disservice for those who actually sit down to watch us. Also, we be fair, because Kenyans are not entirely ignorant. When he says that there is no curriculum to follow, he's not entirely right. But then, of course, he has got the freedom of speech to actually say whatever he says. So it's fine. But I'm just saying that in the spirit of objectivity, that wouldn't be true. Also, even as he says that there's a shortage of 42,000 teachers, as a young person who is actually quite informed as he is, he would also acknowledge that we do not print money, but that last year we hired more than 50,000 teachers. That has never happened any time in the history of this country. So it will also be good to acknowledge efforts being done in, because if resources were bottomless, all of these things would be done. He's gone back and even pointed out about health equipment that is actually dilapidating, and to his credit, he talked about Claire of Asmailu's days. Do we really want to go back and camp there? We will fix that. We have got a regime that is actually saying, we are not in a good place, this is the direction we want to go. The truth is that all of us really want a truthful nation, but all of us do not want to be told the truth, especially when you're going to get, one of the reasons why the deputy president, for example, sometimes gets onto people's nerves is because he has got this disposition of saying the truth. So a lot of people want to be lied to. And if you're going to be lied to, it means that the politician will have to go out of their way and do some other things that might not be sustainable to make you feel happy. Like we did that with the Kenyan shilling. We did that with the subsidies that were, even though they were not sustainable. So you cannot, in one way, for example, want things. You just want the positive side, and you do not look at the question of how. You know, when people come and promise you, we will do this, we will do this, we will do this. What we will do is easy. How you will do it is a question not so many politicians actually want to do. So on that particular bit, he's fair, and I actually want to give it to him. He's fair to feel the way he feels. But then, if your child soils himself, do you throw the child out? what do? You wipe the child. That's why diapers are there. We wipe the child, we bath the child, and dress them appropriately so that we continue having the child. And I spoke about here patriotism. I'm not asking anybody to necessarily feel like you must support the regime of the day. You must call it out. It's very, very important. That's how nations are run. But in so doing, I actually just called for patriotism as opposed to oikophobia, outright oikophobia. And I said about the African saying that if you tell people your calabash is useless, other people will help you to put in rubbish. So you cannot talk about our neighbors telling things about our country when we are the leaders, we are the choir masters on social media and everywhere, trashing our own country before other people. We don't see anything positive. And anything that is, but sometimes even if it's a lie, including social media twists and narratives, we run with them. I needed to point out that. And it's not bad for them to actually come out on that. He spoke about El Nino. He called it little rain. I don't know whether you've lived in Northeastern, but I'll tell you that place ordinarily doesn't see a lot of rain. So when you see that area flooding, that is not little rain. El Nino is a phenomenon. He's a scholar. So when he chooses deliberately to call El Nino little rain, you actually then realize he's not going to be objective in whatever he says after that. And this country has been recovering from so many things. I don't know if he calls El Nino little rain. I don't know what he will call COVID, small disease. But you see, we are just recovering from COVID. Then we had campaigns in this particular country from 1992. If you were to draw economic curve every time, it always goes down when we go to elections.
Arnold, I don't like your tone. Your tone is condescending.
No.
Patronizing.
No, not really.
There's no argument.
We are having...
No. Literally, when you spoke, I did not judge your tone.
Yeah.
Or even the spirit. You spoke, and I liked it that way. But I'm actually saying, from where I'm sitting, that I also might not love your tone, but I don't have to actually go out there and say that I don't like it. I will then stick to the content of what you said. And that's why I was just saying that when we talk about where we are coming from, objectively, I just want us, by the way, I'm not asking you to sing hymns and praise songs to the regime. It's important. No, I'm calling for objectivity.
He's pointing out.
I'm calling out for objectivity. I'm saying that when you say that El Nino is little rain, you are not being realistic because you saw the damage it did.
Okay.
Yes.
Also, when you said that you employed for 50,000 teachers, it's true, but also there's a shortage of 40,000.
Yes, and I say that. So when he says, that's why I said that when he talks about what is less, I didn't tell him to praise. I told him to actually acknowledge that in 1 year, for a new regime, they hired over 50,000 teachers. We know how a budget looks like. He knows, he will know that. And how the availability of resources. So calling for balance,
get the shortage of the
calling for balance is not condescending. Calling for balance. And actually, I think I have tried to be so wide so that then you do not mistake me, but you still picked the wrong. I don't know whether you have got a tonometer or something, but it's okay. Then she initially actually put out a lie that we had reduced the capitation from 22,500 to 12,000. She could be right, but she's only saying about what government has been able to put through, and that is 15,000 and not 12. So those small lies are the ones that people actually spin and they run with them. Again, there is always a rational explanation to that. So be that as it may, I will always expect. Trevor, you would remember that this Friday show for young children, no, not for young children, but for young people, you and I have got a history on how it started, right?
Yeah.
When you were elsewhere, and we approached the management and said that national dialogues, when I was at the National Youth Council, that all morning shows were so heavy and they always looked down on young people, and young people were not given a chance to speak on these morning shows. And then they said, we will try, because everything about young people was always entertainment. So I still have got hope. And nowadays you realize that the entire media industry does morning shows for young people, specifically young panels, on Fridays, which is something that you must actually thank yourself for having been bold enough to start it and pushed it through, did it so well. So I still hope that when we sit here as young people, besides, we cannot sound like the other politicians who come here and just do the political bit of it. That when we come here, at least there should be a difference between we, the young people, and them. So
you're agreeing with all your panelists, except you want them to also mention
to have. I'm talking about not to mention the positive, so, to just have a balance.
Okay.
Because number one, they are young. 2, they are going to be in places of responsibility. Number 3, that you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. It is this zero-sum thinking, extremist thinking, that has actually put us in the problems we are now. We cannot keep on having that particular way of looking at things. So, be that as it may, I think I'm trying to invite them not to get into praise singing for the regime, but to also apply themselves to the other things that inform running of a nation. That way, you give fair comment.
Okay.
And fair comment, plus the education they have, the passions they have, and everything else,
yes,
you realize that you help the person watching and even the listener much better.
Come to Jerry and then come to Abdullah, because Abdullah has been mentioned adversely.
I want to just tell my colleague that in such a panel, everybody has an opinion. And I always wonder why those at the table, dining table, that are eating within the government, he's a UDA advisor. He's telling us we should be positive. But the same person is not telling us, my government has done this and this and this positively, but here and here we have failed. But he expects us to come here and say, the government has done this and this and failed this and this. I would personally request him to say what the government has done. Me, I'm Azimio, and I'm going to boldly say what it has not done, so that we don't have to repeat what the government is doing, what it's not doing. Okay. Me, I will boldly say what it's not doing, then I'll allow him say what it's doing. If he feels I'm wrong and I feel I'm right, at the end of the day, that is what makes a debate important. But you cannot tell us to be positive, yet we all know, hata wewe maisha ni ngumu, over taxation, we have to talk about it honestly. And we cannot allow one government person to make 3 people independently. He's a law student, he's not a politician. Personally, I'm a politician. He's also a politician. But you cannot coerce us to be positive about a government that is not treating us as Kenyans.
Okay, Abdullah.
Yes, thank you, Trevor. One, fair enough. It was El Nino, it was not little rain. However, what was more important is not the choice of the terminology, it was the damage it caused and the money allocated to prevent against that damage. The damage, however, happened. There were sections of this country cut off from the rest of the country for weeks on end. But more importantly, my colleague asks us that when we come to these shoes, let us not act as the other politicians, and let's do things differently. That advice would best fit himself. Why do I say so? When we come to these shows, let's avoid the political correctness for the parties we represent and the individuals we think we politically support. Let's speak about these things the way they affect us. The only person who is being politically correct on this panel is my colleague. Thirdly, so he tells me that what I'm relying on is social media gossip as regards the 42,000 teachers. Trevor, I am quoting Nancy Macharia, the CEO of the Teachers Service Commission, verbatim. She says that the addition of the grade 8 in junior secondary education has caused a shortage of 42,117 teachers. That is not social. That is not social media gossip. That is directly from the horse's mouth. That exists. Thirdly, he asks me that we do not print money, that there is a shortage of finances and all of these things. Fair enough. We understand that the country is facing tough times. But it is the same time when there are constant reports from the Auditor General on how much counties spent on travel, on how much the national government spent on entertainment and, what do they call it, hospitality at State House, running into the billions. If what we are calling for is that the country is facing a shortage of finances, well, we're better to allocate the limited resources we have in the healthcare of our people, in the education of our kids, in improvement of infrastructure, not to hospitality and having mandazi and tea at State House. Unfortunately, that is even when they call for those shortages, which we understand, fair enough, that the country is in tough times. However, we would want the same level of reasonableness that Kenyans are exercising to be exercised by those we entrust our resources to. He tells us that let us not lie to the public, that let us be objective. He calls the deputy president a truthful man. Maybe he is, but let's discuss his words. And as regards the El Nino rain now, so the deputy president and the president said that they'd allocated funds to mitigate the adverse effects which were coming against El Nino to the counties. All county governors stood up and said, no, we have not received a dime from the national government. What was the response from the national government? Reallocate the resources you have to mitigate this immediate risk. That lie did not come from the citizens. That lie came from the national government. If anything, the regime that is built on lying to the people is this regime. The president campaigned on the promise, we will not increase taxes. What has he done? The exact opposite, that they've increased taxes, that we will be respectful of the judiciary. And in his first instances, credit to him, he did swear in the 6 judges, which former President Uhuru Kenyatta had refused to swear in. And of course, we applaud for him. But now he's trained his guns that the regime will not be against the policies that we advance. Hey, Mr. President, litigate your matters in the court. If the courts think that the bills you advanced are unconstitutional, you have every right to go to the Supreme Court, to go to the Court of Appeal, and let the process take its natural course. If they think it is unconstitutional, go back. In regards to his question about who has attacked the judiciary, Trevor, what the courts had done was they'd stopped any further implementation or talks about the housing bill. Kimani Ichung'wah, it is right here, an advertisement for public opinion, what do they call it?
Yeah.
Public participation of the housing bill, in direct contrast to the stoppage by the cost. This is blatant disrespect for the court process. That is what we are getting from this regime. It is not necessarily to attack or to kill and whatnot, to even speak, because the president's words happen to have a lot of weight. So the moment that he stands on a platform and he says that it is the judiciary that is against the interest of the people, and he pits Kenyans against the judiciary, that is a disrespect to the judiciary. That is an attack to the judiciary. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Diora.
Yes.
Then we'll now come to the solution. So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Maliba, I just stated
I'll also have
facts.
to talk about the judiciary.
Right.
It's important.
I just stated facts,
Yeah.
and statistics bear me out that the thermal power injection into our grid is down by 50%. Our dams are full and overflowing, yet the cost of electricity keeps going up. We are asking, what logic is the government using when coming up with policies that affect the common mwananchi directly? Please address that without using a lot of English.
Do I respond to you?
Yeah, go ahead. It's a direct question to you.
First of all, when the former presidential candidate here, and I actually still look forward to having him as a competitor in future, raises this issue, I then would love him to invite him to look at how EPRA explains. We are about 5 days to the next cycle on how they actually do the pricing. Number one, the energy CS told us that even though the dams are full, there is a process to it, and that some dams were actually full, but they weren't running. I don't remember the exact one, but he said number of them that had not been brought online. But the cost of energy cannot necessarily be that fluctuating like the weather. That when there is a lot of rain, it immediately moves on to that. There are other attendant factors, like for example today. And he spoke about the Kenyan currency at the moment, and he spoke about if you are going to, you say 30,000 shillings?
Well, 100,000.
100,000 shillings, so you will come back with 21 million shillings in Tanzania.
Yeah.
I wonder what you will buy with the 21 million shillings, the Tanzanian shillings in Kenya. It will still be worth 100,000. But be that as it may, so there's the issue of the currency pegged on the dollar and the challenge that has been there. Of course, the Kenyan currency, just like in fact, the Naira is doing much worse, has actually had a little bit beating against the dollar. We've, I think, discussed that a lot of times, that the Americans are buying back. I don't want to get into that explanation. It's too academic and not necessary, but be that as it is today. So from where we are, you realize that that will do a bearing to it. You are talking about the thermal injection into the grid has actually gone down to 50%, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean definitely, what is the percentage of the thermal injection into the grid, for example? Because our grid is largely green. Today we have got the greenest, or rather in the region, we have got the greenest grid. So even as you talk about the reduction in the thermal injection into it, how substantive is it into the bigger picture? You talk about the cost of energy going higher. Probably we need to talk about KPLC in a better way. You know, KPLC is just a vendor. KPLC is a shop. Where do they source their power? We have got IPPs. Conversations that when we start here, we start having them here, will be about how we got into bad contracts and stuff. Are we able to undo that in one sitting and still remain with the kind of status we have as a country that respects the rule of law? It might not be possible to change some of those. He will tell you that if we woke up in the morning and say there was a decision that was done in 1997, 2000, and then we don't like it as a nation, we have to walk away from it, it will cost us much more money. You saw yesterday in the papers that it costs us about 85 billion shillings in penalties because people disregard laws, specifically the procurement laws. We get into contracts and then we go away. At the end of the day, who's paying for that? It's us. So there is much more. The energy sector thing is, over the years, has actually been mismanaged. So we are paying for some old loans that might not make sense to me today because I am the one who's footing the bill. I don't like it. The second thing also, and we also need to talk about this, that we've been using Kenya Power to implement social programs and never allowed Kenya Power to operate on market principles. We even dictate how much they should actually be able to charge. But last mile connectivity, especially for the power, they were the ones who were doing that. But were they reimbursed? No. We make sure that KPLC does that, of course, at some facilities, financing facilities that are not good. So if we were to sit here and look at the merits and demerits of some of the things done in the past, then we are not going to be a helpful panel, because we will be embroidered with what happened in the past, who did what, and pointing fingers and moving out. But has the president really currently, is he working towards ensuring that we actually bring that cost down? Yes. Somebody spoke about taxation.
How, please?
I need to talk about the taxation bit of it, because we're talking about being overtaxed. That is a generic argument. As opposed to who?
As opposed to the previous time before?
No, as opposed to who? Overtaxed, as opposed to who?
One simple
because
example, the fuel levy, for example.
Yes.
It increased by 8%. The same people were paying less 8%.
Good question, good question.
Isn't that...
When did Parliament pass the 16%?
Even it doesn't...
No. It's a straight question. Which parliament? Which parliament?
Saying that
the question is...
They're being overtaxed. You argue that they're not?
Fine.
They are not.
No. The question is this. So, every substantive argument and issue has got context to it. And context is important when we are having dialogue. So, which parliament, for example, passed 16%? What informed that particular 16%? Let me talk about the subsidies that we used to actually cover up the other 8%. Oh, no. We are still paying it up to now. So you cannot complain about debt, national debt rising, and you still defend subsidies, especially where they don't make sense. So for each and every issue, so from subsidies that don't make sense, all those things are making, because how do we recoup the money that we went outside there and committed as subsidies, and that is taken by a few people? So even as we speak around that, besides the technical challenges we have, a poor grid system, an energy sector that is disaggregated. I don't want to call it disaggregated, but a broken down energy sector where we have got Kenyan, we have got IPPs, and some of them actually, we pay them. Look at how you would pay an IPP. That for you to set up an IPP, readiness to supply, not that we are supplying, there is money we pay for you to actually, every month we will reimburse you that you are ready to give us power. Not that we're going to do. For every power you bring in, we then pay for it at exorbitant prices. And by the way, they have got this clause of use or pay. So literally, as a country, in the past, we've made mistakes. But then if we were going to actually having one brush, using same stroke to actually clean up everything or explain everything else, we will not move so far.
Okay.
So if you were to look at how EPRA will actually break down, that is on Tuesday, I think, you actually see how they break down that. Then you can actually interrogate it much further.
Okay.
You will realize that some of them cannot be solved unless we get a dictator in State House where we disregard everywhere we have been. And that will lower so many other things.
Okay.
Where we stand as a country. So these challenges exist, yes. But then,
all right,
do we pitch here? Yes.
Okay, Jerry.
I don't want to keep having to go back and forth with somebody in government because he has said we are not being overtaxed and maybe...
I didn't even finish that point. He didn't allow me to finish.
No, it's okay. I will not respond to that because I realized I will be short of time and I will not have done what I intended to do this morning. First of all, the newspaper today tells us that the State House is under renovation and I'm wondering, why are we renovating State House yet our president is a tourist? He's never there. I mean, we should even be talking about renting out State House, not renovating State House, so that the private person who is going to take over the State House can renovate it and maybe give us some rent. Because why are we renovating State House? Then we are talking about 2 to 3 billion spent on presidential trips. Then we are talking about a president who is all over. As State House is being renovated, he's all over other state lounges where he's staying for now. And he's commissioning and recommissioning projects that were done during Uhuru's time, completed over 90%, and he's now coming to commission. I'm yet to understand. Maybe this regime has not told the president the difference between launching and commissioning. Why are you commissioning a 90% done project? Or maybe I like to understand the English terminology nowadays has changed because yesterday he was in Nyandarua relaunching a project that was launched by the previous years, who is Sisiri Karaoke, in 2021. We are in 2024. You are telling us of a project that was talked about in 2021, done almost halfway. That is what yesterday you are standing on the rooftops to tell us about. And you are spending taxes, and that is where the problem of overtaxation comes. You are spending money on unnecessary things. These projects were done by Uhuru when he was busy campaigning. Now he's in government. We are talking about, we've taken 2.5 trillion loans so far, yet we have no mega infrastructure that is going on. But we have loans already. Then again, a very simple thing. When last regime was doing campaigns, they told us that the expressway was Uhuru's private road and he should not be taxing Kenyans to use it. Then now you are in government, you are telling us from Westlands to the end of expressway, it's now going to almost 600 shillings, 560 to 600 shillings. You are now adding charges to the same road that you told Kenyans should be used by Kenyans for free. We have allowed this regime wake up and lie to us that even when he tells us something that is true, we have to really confirm and reconfirm.
Okay.
I would kindly request anybody who advises this regime, please tell them, even if it's to woo a lady, the lies are too much. At least do one thing. We are talking of a president that is ever kutenga, anatenga, anapanga, and at the end of the day, it's 2024. We still have 2-3 financial years. What is he going to be doing if 1 year down the line, he has not started any mega project? Okay. He's still doing campaigns. We are seeing school buses. When you see a crowd that is addressing somewhere in Nyandarua County where I come from, or Laikipia County where I also happen to pass by as I go to the other side of Ndaragwa constituency, you are seeing school buses parked along the roads, meaning politicians were given money to ferry people to the location. And funny enough, there was a clip that was going round where in Nyahururu at the roundabout, nobody is even bothering to listen to him, and you feel the disinterest that Kenyans have with this regime. Okay. If you are a good president, and I wish we were saying he's doing 40%, and then 60% is going to be done as we walk off. This one is not even doing 40%. He's doing bare minimums, okay, and still overtaxing us, because I want to major it on overtaxing us, because you are not going to tell me right now 1,000 shillings when I go to a supermarket. I can't even tell the cashier to wrap it up for me. I hold the items and walk out. Okay.
Let's come to the solutions now, but let's bring up some of the feedback, and then I'll come to all of you to get to the solutions and your closing remarks as well. At Trevor Mbija, at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's bring that feedback up so that we see what you're saying. The people who are out there, let's read them quite some time. Ayoma, Dina says, if you haven't noticed, the president in back to full campaign mode. He's back to whipping emotions, pointing fingers. Tumekubaliana. Nani anakubaliana na sisi? Nasema tuendelee. Okay. Godi Baraza says the youth should rise up and be the true agents of positive recalibration for our nation. If our young people don't speak up and reject the negative trajectory the country is taking, then we are on a sharp, detrimental nosedive. Babu Michael says it's very sad that the previous regime wasn't obeying some court orders, and the Kenya Kwanza regime during their campaigns condemned that and promised not to follow suit. It's now disturbing that even the president has said he won't obey court orders. J.M. Musoma says it's sad that a graduate has taken a life for not getting a job despite making over 500 applications. Punitive taxation has scared away investors, leading to scarcity and massive loss of jobs. Engineer Razaro says tension between two important arms of government alone is a clear indication that the country could be sliding into anarchy. President seems to be advocating for constitutional crisis, I believe that's what you want to say, by his consistent public attack on the judiciary. Oleshonko says, from the look of things, it is clear that there is still a long way to go for things to change. We could be looking at the fourth quarter of the year. We need to see improvement in the manufacturing sector and more support to SMEs to create more opportunities and money. Team Kenya says Kenya is a dying country. With the current Kenya Kwanza persecution, late President Kibaki's middle class will be eliminated. We shall remain with a few rich people enjoying kickbacks from government projects and millions of poor people. Okay. Bob Otieno says we are heading into the right direction, and the measures government is taking are long-term, not a Mr. Quick Fix thing, which has helped our country not to go to the Ghana way and looking for better days ahead. Okay? Brian Chemo says we need the Kabila La Vijana initiative to push the government to offer financial support or mentorship programs to encourage youths to establish their businesses as we embrace digital literacy for diverse career paths in rapidly changing world. Okay? Max says the country is plunging into a bottomless pit. With the start of the year, glimmers have slipped from the grips of the hands of many Kenyans. Now, NSSF, electricity and fuel prices are daily increasing and are on an all-time high. All right, Selimo says we talk of democracy and free will, yet this housing tax is forced down our throats, whether we like it or not. Quick question. What if I'm comfortable with my own manyata and doesn't want a bigger? Okay. Okay, that's Selimo Denzel. I think that's the last one, or should we do still have a few more? Sir Nixon says it is the responsibility of youthful leaders, especially those in law firms who are in positions that can assist in agitation of youth rights, to do so in vigorously following the available lawful mechanisms. No sitting back this time. All right. Closing remarks and solutions going forward. And I'll start with you, Abdullah. Yes. Yep. Abdullah.
Yes. So, Trevor, I think it's just upholding the basic foundations of any successful society in where our solutions lie. So, one, I would say respect for the rule of law. So, respect for the court process, just a general respect for the rule of law, that no one is above the law. I think that's a basic foundation of any prosperous, successful society. Secondly, I think the way ahead, and especially for the economy, is stop competing for local credit at 15–17% with local small, medium enterprises. So if anything, if the government can stop issuing these bonds that with very short-term maturity rates of 5 years at 17%, I think that is stifling out a lot of local businesses from accessing cheap credit. I think if we can get cheap credit, there will be a lot. I think the solutions to a lot of the economic problems do not lie within the government, they lie within the business and private sector. Thirdly, I think there are some taxes which are just unnecessary. Even if they were to benefit a collection, I think that the indirect harm they cause is far bigger than the amount they bring in. So I'll use the example of the 5% on agricultural produce. So agriculture is the largest contributor to GDP. It is also the largest employer in this country. Last year, we imported agricultural produce worth a whopping 300 billion shillings. So all of that forex is going out. There's a lot of stress on the forex. So how do we replace that 300 billion is if we start up local agricultural production. So even if, I don't know what the computation by, let's say, the Treasury or Kenya Revenue Authority on what this 5% will bring in terms of revenue, I think that the harm it causes to the agricultural sector is far worse than the amounts that they foresee that it will bring. Yes, I think mostly those, and upholding or at least an improvement in education. I think the reduction in the capitation, the changing to the university funding, I think all of those have a direct effect on the education of our people. What it has is a long-term effect on the economy and all of those things. So if we could see an improvement in education funding and healthcare, we will see a long-term stable country.
Okay.
Yes.
Diora?
Well, I would wish to request that the president remembers the oath of office he took, that he will uphold and defend the Constitution of Kenya. He has the responsibility to inspire confidence in those seeking justice in the country, that they will find it there. Recently, there is a case with regard to a judge that the JSC concluded, if there is evidence that there are corrupt officials in the judiciary, as there are all over the government, let that evidence be tabled through the channels that exist, and let's keep encouraging those within our jurisdiction to abide by the law. Nobody is above the law. And I know it's not too late for the president and those in his government to step back and realize that it's only a year and about a quarter that has gone by. There's still time for them to try and salvage the promise they gave to Kenyans. Let them stop looking for excuses as to why they may not be able to deliver on the promise, because I realize they are panicking that 5 years could be gone and they will not have delivered what they promised. So they are trying to use the judiciary as a scapegoat, that we were not able to deliver to you because the judiciary came in the way. Yeah. There is still time for us to redeem the promise that this government gave to us. But if they are not able to govern under the current framework, they should let Kenyans know and hand that mandate back to Kenyans so Kenyans can find someone that can, because there is 50 million of us here, and they are competent and patriotic Kenyans who can move this nation forward.
You've been in the political trenches, and I'd like to hear about this from all of you here. We see some of the headlines that we promised to talk about. Ruto and Raila talks report set to be implemented. Raila plans consultative meetings across the country. We've had some of the leaders talking about the campaigns. Is this the right time to start campaigning? You've been in the political trenches, that's why I'm starting with you on that. Well,
for the president, he has a job to do. He has a country to run. I hope he sticks to that. For Raila Amolo Odinga, he's a party leader. He's required to make sure that he undertakes all the duties that a party leader is supposed to perform. So if he's going around the country recruiting members, that's his job. He should be allowed to do that, whether it raises tensions in the country or not. Let us keep having the conversations that will move this nation forward. What is wrong is for those in office right now to be on the rooftops of their cars acting like they do not have offices where they should be working. 2027 should not be on their minds right now. For those in the opposition, we must put more effort to ensure that we are holding those in office to account, be it in holding barazas, kamukunjis, calling protests, whatever it takes, just so we can ensure that this government delivers as they promised they would, since they are already getting all that they want from Kenyans. Yeah.
As a political player, you are happy with the NADCO report? Because that's one of the things that is supposed to be implemented, and we see they're saying that it's coming up in Parliament.
Well, it's...
Does it cover some of your interests, or is it just about the big two?
Well, it does cover quite a bit of material that was supposed to be discussed. Yeah. It's not comprehensive. This is a conversation that once the report is now with Wananchi, we will make better. You know, it's never in the text where we have a problem. The problem arises when it's time to implement what has been put in the reports. So we wait until that time when the rubber hits the road.
Okay. Jerry, your recommendations going forward?
First of all, when we talk of the solutions that we would want this government to maybe look into, and I hope the advisors can keep reminding them time to time, one of the things that I would want to talk about is the independence of every arm of this government, judiciary, parliament, and the executive. What do I mean by this? I mean that we should not be seeing arms of government coming out, gun blazing on each other. Now, what does the president, when he comes out and bashes or have outbursts on the judiciary, expect somebody in Matu or somebody in Nyandarua County to do? You are the president. You are coming to tell me, complaining to me. You should work on something around that. You have an attorney general who can advise you on what is the best way to go with that. I think also the parliament should stop being an extension of the executive, because for the last 1 year, what we've seen is the parliament being an extension of the executive. What do I mean by this? The moment you come to the ground and Wanjiko tells you this finance bill is not something that I want to do this year, and even if you want to do it gradually, because I always believe we cannot talk of a taxation every now and then. Why it becomes a discussion every now and then is because you bring it one time from 0 to 100. If you are doing it gradually, maybe we would talk about it's for the better of the country. So I think parliamentarians, anybody who sits there, you should remember that they should try and bring out what is exactly on the ground, because kwa ground mambo ni different. Also on the competency of this regime, by the fact that this nation, we find ourselves that the positions of CS and other big positions in this regime are given in accordance to political affiliations and all that. I hope in future we look at a point where competency is more than political affiliations, because the moment political affiliations becomes the front line of what decides who is who in which department or in which ministry, we get to a point where nobody wants to be looked at their party leader like a sellout or like somebody who is not supporting their party leader. I also want to encourage this regime to stop the Uhuru debate. Uhuru went to retirement. He served us for 10 years. And it's very sad when you wake up in 2024, 1 year after somebody has left office, and you're telling people that Uhuru is sponsoring people to go to court to sabotage your ideas. The obsession with Uhuru should stop. From the likes of Kimani Ichung'wah, to the likes of Didi Nyoro, to the likes of even the president himself, who wakes up and say that we are being sabotaged by the people that we took home. We should not be in 2024 discussing who took the seat. We should be discussing who is running the government? How are they running it? Are Kenyans contented with how this regime is running? So the Uhuru factor should no longer be there. And on this, I also want to talk about the so-called Mungeki story that is being passed here and there. It's very unfortunate that until New Year, we are still having issues with somebody wanting to taint a certain politician as a sponsor to a certain group. If you have evidence, please take it to court. We would gladly take Uhuru and whoever else is being accused. We would support them and take them to court and listen to the allegations. But you cannot be in public every now and then. Everything is Uhuru, everything. And you heard our president, our retired president, say it has gotten to a point even when a wife does not get pregnant, it is told it's Uhuru. So on the last point, I also want to say that Wanjiko, at the end of the day, if we do not allow Wanjiko pocket money as they told us. Right now, Makandamia, when we went for Christmas, yani paka unapewa Makandamia for free because they are wondering, where do I take it? 1 kg, last regime used to go for 200 shillings. Right now, it's 30 shillings, 20 to some extent. Now, you can imagine if that is what we are talking 1 year down the line, how is it going to be in the next 4 years? So we need pesa mfukoni as they told us. And how are we going to do this? We need those in those departments, the PS, the CS, the officers in those departments and ministries to come out clean, come to Mwananchi, listen, what can we do here and here? We need to cut down on what? What do we need to increase when it comes to the cost of production, or how do we help the farmer do more production? Because we are in a situation where our import and export is not balancing. Okay. And the moment they don't balance, we are left at a situation that we find ourselves, one side is complaining and one side is benefiting. Okay. Can I respond on the political side that you asked? Yes. On the political side, I want to say, personally, I am an Azimio supporter, and I think Raila Odinga should now be allowed to do what he should be doing as a party leader. He's doing recruitment, as my friend has said, which is very right, and nobody should question him. But I have a problem with somebody waking up, you already are in government, and you are telling us, come 2027. No, please do your job. Let those who are doing politics. Opposition should, in fact, be more vigorous right now. Let them call out this regime. And if it means Baba taking us back to the roads, we are going to be there. And if it means this nation, everybody standing aside and telling this regime, you know what? If you don't do A, B, C, and D, we also want to step aside and tell you how things are according to the Mwananchi. Because we have a problem of this nation of people thinking that sauti ya Mwananchi is only important when it comes to election. If Mwananchi tells you this is too much, please listen to it. Okay. And also, when it comes to politics, I really saw yesterday, even in our newspaper, we are saying that the president invited the fraction of Jubilee that is aligned to Sabina Chege to the State House. And I really want to wonder, the moment you keep interfering with political party independence as a president, as a regime, somebody is going to call it out and say, no, he's bringing opposition closer. But I just remember, Jubilee has a court case that I don't want to even talk about. He's not the party leader. The party leader remains to be Uhuru Kenyatta. So we need to see this regime stepping aside. Let political parties do their things. Okay. You cannot keep interfering and wanting to put people against each other, yet you still expect 2027 to tell us that this is the political party that people should try vote you back with. Okay. Yes.
Maliba.
Trevor.
Start with the solutions and then come to your closing.
No, I'll have to do responses first.
Okay.
If we don't have to do responses, ninaomba serikali ya Citizen TV ihakikishe kuwa if you set up a panel, at least it should be 50-50, because if I'm one and I'm responding to 3 people, I sometimes lose out on others.
She's the only one who said she's Azimio.
No, not really. Sometimes
Abdullah is a lost
sometimes
fine.
It doesn't mean sometimes the balance should be like, for example, like here we are. Of course, it's a good mix, but I'm just saying that in this particular instance, we've got 1 minute to 8. They've said so much. I needed to actually respond to some of those.
Go ahead.
Anyway, so in future, try to balance us. But be that as it may, I can hold my ground. I'll start with this. Njeri, if she were to be a chef, she would be a very good one. She knows how to add spice, salt. Naongeza kachumvi, kachumbari kwa umbali sana. You know, like even with the expressway, all of us know it's a maximum of 500 shillings. She already was talking about 600 shillings. It's on record. She's running everywhere. And by the way, you know, this is a very honest opinion. Calling the president a tourist can actually be a very good soundbite. But it's not a clever statement. As in, it's cliche, it's sloganeering. We cannot be doing things the same way and going around those things and actually thinking that is noble and proper commentary. Anyway, I'd love to move very fast and spend a lot of my time on the judiciary. The President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto, invited the nation, when he spoke in Nyandarua, invited the nation to a conversation on judicial accountability. In his statement in Nyandarua, he did not use the word defy. Only the media will tell us where they got the word defy. The president said the things that we should not allow is what he called judicial impunity and judicial tyranny. He will tell you of a maxim in law that says that no man is above the law and no man is beneath the law. And we should not ask anyone of permission when we ask somebody to obey the law. The president swore to uphold and protect the law. We've had calls for the rule of law here. So, when we talk about the rule of law, upholding it is not necessarily the business of the judiciary alone. Even we as individual citizens are expected to actually work in that particular breadth. So, when the president says that there are a few people, and he was specific, by the way, the president raised the issue with only 3 cases. 3 cases, and he spoke about a few people. How we then collectivize that and then go ahead and force to actually talk about that the president is fighting the judiciary, I don't see that. And by the way, let us look at some of those judgments that actually the president raises issues with. He might actually not have pointed out. Do you know that at the point he spoke, when he raised that particular issue, you will not renew your ID or get a new ID because somebody went to court over a process or something else, and out of that, people who are turning 18 now were not able to get their IDs. So tell that to the young person who misses out on a job because they need an ID, you need to open an M-Pesa, you need to open a bank account. Tell them that you cannot get the ID because it's the rule of law. We have got about 4 million children who on Monday and Tuesday will be going back to school. Or rather, from last week and from this week and next week, about 4 million children are going to secondary school. Partly, I'm not saying that that is the entire reason why EduAfya might not work, but partly from where we sit now, you might not be able to implement EduAfya because somebody someplace thought it out of a process, disgruntled, vested interest and everything else to stop that particular process. So, when you have got over 4 million vulnerable children exposed, you are forced to ask some of these questions. Who does the law serve? This is not a criminal matter. Then we have got the housing levy. Supposing there are people who are already working on those sites, and she's actually spoken about it very eloquently, who launched and stuff. When you stop that particular process, I'm saying, supposing you go to court and you get orders to stop that, for that particular young person who is on that particular site to go back home with a young family, and they are not able to meet their landlord and pay their rent, can that young person meet the landlord and tell them, I will pay your rent with the rule of law, the court order? I will feed my children. I will go and see the shopkeeper and tell them that it's quote unquote the rule of law. When I'm talking about, it's not entirely the rule of law as it should be, because I can tell you, there are a lot of precedents set out there when it comes to issues like this, issues where the public interest is actually of importance. Whom do you give priority to? And in 2012, no one less than the CJ Emeritus, Mutunga, said that we need to have, and you can check it out, actually it's reported by Citizen, you can find it on your site, we need to have a conversation on judicial accountability, but because there is corruption. When Maraga was handing over, he said we need to have a conversation on corruption in the judiciary. The current CJ has actually also spoken of the same. I can take you back. Raila Odinga has in the past spoken about problems in the judiciary. Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president, has spoken of problems in the judiciary. When William Ruto speaks about it, and William Ruto did not say he will defy court orders, he only said that we need, number one, he invited the nation to have a national conversation on this, and we are already having. That is why I was actually saying that his call for a national conversation on judicial accountability came a little bit late, because it should have actually been a part and parcel of NADCO. And that's why I was thinking, I said, this is a personal opinion, that we should have NADCO 3 to precisely talk about judicial tyranny and impunity and corruption there. And then there's something else. We also need to talk about state capture. That should also be the other bit of it, because there are a few, those things do exist. So we should open up NADCO process 3 so that we then embody this. So when you look at, and I'm just citing a few things. The president invited us to a conversation. We are having it robustly. When you see people are angry, LSK is going to the streets, that is a national conversation. We are having a national dialogue, because democracy is about dialogue, and dialogue is not easy. Who told you that people fight? They fold their shites because they cannot have dialogue. So dialogue is difficult. We are having a very robust dialogue as a nation on this particular issue, whether with passion, whether with intelligence, whether with brown, with whatever means we are using. It is a robust national dialogue, and therefore the president's call for a national dialogue is successful. If you go back to the clip, he said, we need to have a conversation. We are having it. So to that extent, that call is successful. All of us agree that, of course, there are problems in the court. And is the judiciary above accountability? No. Like I said, no man is above the law and no man is beneath the law. And when we ask people to obey the law, when we ask for the rule of law, we should not feel like we are asking for permission. And this is the point. Even in the court system itself, it acknowledges, the philosophy around the judiciary already acknowledges that sometimes mistakes can be made. And that is why there is the appeal mechanism. A lot of times, we might not want to go back and appeal, but we say, I do not agree with that ruling, but I respect it. So the president is voicing out, and he's also a citizen. Like any other person, he's a citizen. He has got a right to actually express himself where he doesn't like, and if things do not look right. So I do not see people talking about there is damage to control. What damage? That he's fighting the judiciary. Who has fought who?
Okay. Okay. Very quickly now, because Abdullahi 1 minute, and I'll give you 1 minute just to finish.
Yes.
Abdullahi.
And so my colleague talks about judicial accountability, and I don't think there's anything wrong with judicial accountability. The question is, how do we hold the judiciary accountable? Do we hold the judiciary accountable by calling out the specific decisions which you feel you do not agree with as the president in political rallies and funerals? No, you don't do that.
What's wrong with that?
Oh, there's absolutely everything.
Article 1 of the Constitution, what does it say? What is wrong with that?
I mean, that's what I'm about to come to, that what is wrong with that? That there are established mechanisms to hold this judiciary accountable, legal mechanisms. You as the president cannot stand respectfully, logically, even if there isn't a text of the law that says preventing the president from standing in political rallies, the spirit of the law, logic, political sense on the relationship between these three arms of government says that it is wrong for you to call out the judiciary. Specifically, he talks about
who wrote that logic. Who wrote that logic?
Let him finish.
Was there public participation for us to actually talk about that?
That's not the way
spirit?
to think about it. I mean,
The quick
the
question is
independent
this.
arms of
I'm
government
actually telling
says
you
that there's a structure of dealing.
There
with
is
issues
that,
if
but
you have
there is
problems.
also the political way. And we've seen that.
But
No.
Article,
when we talk about political, we're talking about Article 1. All sovereign power belongs to the people.
Okay.
And the people can delegate that. And that's I want him, as he does that, I don't want him to think in the straitjacket of a lawyer.
No,
I want him to also realize that the country we live in is not a law court. This is a political phenomenon.
No, 100%. 100%. Of course, he argues that there's a political mechanism to do this and all of these things. Comparatively, judicial officers are not politicians. They cannot participate in that political process you want to drag them to. If they were how on earth?
It's okay, they do. I will answer. I will just finish.
How on earth can they do that?
I will answer.
So judicial officers by their structure need to be impartial in all of these things. They cannot participate in political discussions and political rallies and whatnot. You cannot have a political response in a political rally from the judiciary. You would not expect that judge to come and litigate a matter in which you are a participant. That is just basic common sense, I want to believe. But secondly, so the question is, he says that there are three things, and these things are important to the public, and there are people derailing the public interest. Fair enough. Affordable healthcare is a public interest. We want to achieve affordable healthcare. We want to achieve affordable housing for as many citizens as possible. However, discrimination that was pointed out in the housing levy thing is also an issue of public interest. Why is it that only salaried Kenyans are financing the housing levy to the discrimination of unsalaried Kenyans? Discrimination is not allowed within the law. That is also an issue of public interest. Why do you think your public interest and your political interest, which is building houses for the masses, trumps over this other public interest? So we can get both of them. Simply what the courts told you was go back to the drawing board, get us a bill and an act of parliament that is constitutional, that is not discriminatory, that respects all of these things. And you can achieve that. And of course, they think they can achieve that because they published a new bill. They went back to parliament because they understandably agree with the courts, which my colleague does not want to agree with, that there were problems with our bill. So no particular public interest trumps over the other. I think all of these are public interests which can be harmonized.
Okay, Jerry, very briefly.
Yeah,
We've run out of time.
I simply want to say that it's very unfortunate for when he was saying that LSK wants to go to the street. I simply want to tell my colleague and maybe any other Kenya Kwanza supporter who feels that the president and his people were right. LSK and the Judicial Service Commission are very busy people of this nation, and if you see them speaking, you as a Kenyan should be worried. If the judge that you are expecting to give a ruling on your... That is what let me finish my point, Maliba. Yes. What I am saying is the judges of this nation and the LSK Commission and everybody else are very busy people. And I want to just say it in a layman language, mwananchi wa kawaida, when you see these people speak professionally, these people have their basis as why they had to even do press conferences and do all those letters to every other media station. Please, as a Kenyan, ukiona judge anaongea, ukiona wakili anaongea, and it's about you as mwananchi, you should even be screaming, not sitting pretty and wanting to entertain what this executive wants to impose on us. And as I finish, I want to tell any other person who is in this nation, the court is a fair arbiter. And I think if the president feels it's not, some people are corrupt, please take them to court. The judges will be there to do their work. Okay. Last but not least, all Kenyans, please, musinyamaze, tafadhali.
Mudhiora, 1 minute.
The president is afforded competent counsel by Kenya's taxes. I advise him to use that. Number 2, he has numbers in parliament. If he needs for a law to be amended, to be created, he can achieve that. Even if he wanted for the constitution to be amended, it's a process that is open to him. Let him use the levers at his disposal, but within the framework of the constitution as it is.
Okay.
About Ihide, the president, and Arnold is massaging the truth here like any true UDA mujahideen would do. The president clearly asked the principal secretary, or was it the CS, to set aside money and carry out the project that a court had stopped. That he did. That's the truth. It's on record. So if we indeed want to move forward, let us own up to the truth. Where we have erred, let us apologize and promise to do better.
All right. Thank you so much.
No.
In 1 minute.
You are interrupting us.
Okay, fine. He says that the housing levy is discriminatory because it's only on salaried people. Trevor, you pay as you earn. It's only taxed on them that work. Has it been called out as discriminatory?
But we have
it's pay as well.
No,
only those who get salaries are being paid by.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Ben Sue and Roy T-Boy coming up next. Bye for now.